Hello, I'm Wendela Whitcomb Marsh. I started out as a special education teacher and I loved it. My favorite students, the most interesting learners, were often also the ones who had the most complicated behavior problems. Later, I became a school psychologist and then a BCBA, a board certified behavior analyst. I learned a lot about the science of behavior and also about autism spectrum disorders. I realized that some of my favorite students probably were autistic, although we didn't know that at the time. The way they learned was just unique. Well, I'd love to go back in time and tell my young teacher self, "You're on the right track, don't give up." Or, "Oh, that'll never work, try this instead." Of course, I don't have a time machine, not one that works. So I did the next best thing. I wrote a book for teachers. It's called The ABCs of Autism in the Classroom, Setting the Stage for Success. In this book, we talk a lot about autism and about behavior in ways that I think my younger teacher self would have appreciated. I go over the function of behavior, the ABCs, which are A for antecedents, what happened before the behavior, B for the behavior, what happened, and then C, the consequences, what happened after the behavior. We also talk about interventions, about antecedent control procedures, which is just setting the stage, setting things up in advance to have the best behavior day possible. There are some evidence-based strategies in here, strategies that may have been developed for autistic children, but work just as well for children who are not autistic. We also talk about generalizing to different places so that what they learn in your classroom they can do out in the world, and maintaining those behaviors so that what they're learning today they can continue to have as part of their life in the future. I made up 5 fictional characters, students. They're not real students, they're not based on anyone real, but they're the kind of kids that I think some of you might have in your classrooms. One of them is Anthony, who acts out. He's 7. We've got Disruptive Destiny. She's a 10-year-old girl. Defiant Daniel is 12. Sophia, who engages in self-injurious behavior, is 6 years old. She doesn't talk, but she loves numbers. She's in a county class. And Aggressive Aiden is 14 years old, and when he gets frustrated, sometimes he acts out in aggressive ways. For every one of the topics and chapters in the book, I then talk about how each one of these 5 very different children might benefit from that strategy or from that idea, and how you can modify it to fit each of their very different needs and ages. Also, at the end of every chapter, I have a section called In Their Own Words, where I've asked autistic adults and teens to give me some ideas of what do they wish their teachers knew. If they could talk to their teachers or to you, what would they like you to know about being an autistic student and about how you might help them? So I'm going to read you one of those right now. This is written by Anne, who is an autistic adult. And Anne writes, "To me, autism is part of who I am. It's woven into my brain, and it means the way I think is different from the norm. It's a very fundamental difference. It can't be separated out from the rest of me. There are parts of me that I consider important, like interests and hobbies, likes and dislikes. And if you removed that one aspect of my personality, the rest of me wouldn't change much. If I preferred green beans to broccoli, I would still be the same me, essentially. I would still have the same thoughts and emotions. I would still interact with the world in the same way. If I was less depressed or anxious, or if I didn't have one particular obsessive-compulsive quirk, if you removed one of those things from me, it would be a change to my daily life and my brain, but it wouldn't make me a different person. Autism is different. You can't separate it out from the rest of me. It would require a whole new brain, a different ratio of gray to white brain matter. I wouldn't be the same person on any level if I did not have autism. I wouldn't process emotions the same way. I wouldn't engage with my hobbies and interests on the same level. I would not think the way that I think. I wouldn't remember information the way that I remember. I would be a completely different person. And this would erase not only the difficulties that come with autism, but all the things that I do like about myself. This is something that I think people who talk about curing autism don't understand. You can't separate out the good from the bad. A brain has autism, or it doesn't. And if you had the ability to wave a magic wand and make an autistic brain not, you would be changing everything, not just the parts that look like autism. I am a lot of things. I use different labels when I interact with different groups, and those labels carry different levels of importance. To some people, it's important that I am a writer, but not that I am a Star Trek fan. To others, it's important to know that I love Star Trek, but it's not important to know that I bake or what kind of people I date. But there is no group where my autism ceases to be part of my identity. As a writer with autism, I process and plan and connect things a certain way. I write ASD characters, and I describe sensory details based on my experience. As a Star Trek fan with autism, I engage with the material in certain ways. I relate to certain characters, Spock, Data, Bashir, more than others. I read and memorize bits of trivia, and I find comfort in having a special interest that I can turn to. As a baker with autism, I crave or dislike certain sensory aspects of the process. I like to know the science behind how everything works in the kitchen. And if I'm used to doing things a certain way, I don't like change. Having to use a different oven might stop me in my tracks, even if it's not that different from the oven I learned to bake using. And as an ASD person in general, it's very important to me that the people I befriend or date understand how autism impacts my life. You might think, well, a lot of neurotypical passionate Star Trek fans obsess over trivia, and a lot of neurotypical writers draw from experience when writing sensory details, and a lot of neurotypical bakers enjoy the feel of dough or prefer a routine. And that's all true. I mean, except for the part where you thought there were a lot of neurotypical passionate Star Trek fans. Having autism doesn't mean I'm an alien species or a robot. People with autism still have a lot in common with neurotypical people, and there are things we can all understand. But there are also ways in which our experience is, even in quiet ways, fundamentally different. Because it isn't just the one thing. It's the way that every aspect of the experience connects. That was written by Anne. If you're a teacher and you have autistic students in your classroom, I wrote this book for you. If you don't have any autistic students, don't worry, I'm sure you will, and you're going to love them. I hope you'll read my book and let me know what you think. You can find me at www.wendelawhitcombmarsh.com, all one word. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you.